We are back today with um, candidate for re-election, a current incumbent county commissioner in Okanogan County, Commissioner Chris Branch. Hi there, sir. It's great to have you, to be speaking with you, and hope you're doing well.
Doing well this morning. It's been a busy week.
Fantastic, fantastic. So just a word about the project. We're hoping to just interview you and have a conversation with you, really in pursuit of learning more about you and the platform, that you're running on, and as well as your personality, of course. That's of course very important. And so hopefully this doesn't run as much as Q&A interview kind of thing, but we can have a conversation and interject some questions here and there. And yeah, so let's just get started by talking about how you came to call Okanogan County home, kind of what your story is with Okanogan County.
Well, it started a long time ago, around 1954. I was actually born in Okanogan County, but I was born in a little, I was born at the Colville Indian Agency near Nispelem, Washington there, which is at the eastern edge of Okanogan County and then the Colville Indian Reservation, where my family, my mother is a tribal member, lived in Ferry County, across the Ferry County line. So I was born there and had lived, I think, several places across the state, and growing up, but I ended up here again when my parents were divorced. I lived with my grandmother here in Omak, in the outside the town here in a small trailer house with my two sisters and her. And spent the first few years in grade school here and partially at St. Mary's Mission, a boarding school near here. And then and left here in the mid 60s and was moved down to Portland when my mother remarried, Portland, Oregon, which was culture shock for me. And spent about 8 years there and then joined the U.S. Coast Guard at 17. It was an option that I chose. Quit high school and took some tests and was able to get in the Coast Guard while the Vietnam War was winding down, and spent 4 years there and then came back to Omak, which always was my home. I spent summers on the Colville Indian Reservation working on ranches, and I've worked on farms even in the Portland area with my stepbrothers and sisters who were a Hispanic family that would make their rounds through this area. And then later in years, I did, after getting out of the Coast Guard, I came here and used my experience from the Coast Guard as a heavy duty mechanic, machinery technician to work for Crown Zeller back at the mill here for a couple of years, drove truck a little bit, and then went out to work in the woods as a logger. It was more exciting for a young man like me at that time. And worked through that for about 12 years for Crown Zellerback and for a Indian logger after Crown Zellerback shut down their wood sides. And then I was very much in an inquiry mode, looking at what was behind all the Endangered Species Act issues when the woods were shut down in some areas and sawmills were being shut down. And I went and finished a college degree at Evergreen State College. I actually went to college nights and weekends and things while I was laid off from the woods, and I got a bachelor's degree. I was studying environmental studies, tribal resource development, things like that, but they were relative to what I was doing here. And eventually I came right back here, actually even did some internships here as a community development person. And I've been in community development and planning for small towns and cities in and around Okanogan County, and some work for the county for 27 years now. So if you add the 3.5 years I've been a county commissioner, which I've always worked and interacted with county commissioners, I've got 30 years of experience in local government. And that's the basics of my platform is experience and knowledge about local government. And then from that point on, it is actually all the involvement that I had with various government entities and tourism and economic development work over the years that benefited the county here, and brought that experience with me, which is pretty unique for a county commissioner in Okanogan County to have that sort of a background. I was the president of the Planning Association of Washington for a few years, and and to various other nonprofits that are connected to local government.
Fantastic, fantastic. So yeah, I have a question about working in city planning. What exactly did that entail? How similar to that, or how similar was that to your current job description now as a commissioner?
Right. Well, comprehensive planning is something that we did, and it shorelights master programs, that kind of work for the cities and towns, and sometimes they were actually uh, joint documents that we worked on, regulatory documents with Okanogan County. So it's very similar work. The county Planning Enabling Act is different than the Enabling Act for cities and towns, but not very different. So there's always an interplay anyway that needs to happen when it comes to comprehensive planning. But we're not a growth management county in that we don't plan fully under the Growth Management Act. And so that makes us a bit different. But still, we try to follow the format of the Growth Management Act, just because if we ever fall under it, we want to kind of be prepared for that.
So
So that is, go ahead.
what exactly does that? What exactly are all the platforms highlighted in the Growth Management Act? Yeah, sorry, I'm not super familiar at all.
It's a planning act in the state of Washington that actually requires comprehensive planning, which includes planning for land use, transportation, public facilities, a good many different things, and critical areas, which we do have to do, which means those lands that need protection, wetlands, fish and wildlife conservation areas and things like that. So it's a required planning thing for counties that have a certain level of growth, and there's a few that fall outside of that growth requirement. So in essence, we don't really have to have a comprehensive plan. That would be not very smart to have one. But to do zoning, you really do have to have one. And we have zoning in towns and cities and the county. So that's what that's related to. But it also has a strong economic development element, which I did a lot of that work as a small, working for several small towns. I had a lot of latitude. So I worked with the state legislature, and then worked with the Canadians on economic development, because I was working for a town near the border, Orville, Washington.
Orville, right. That's fantastic. Very, very fascinating. Certainly not in my wheelhouse, so it's great to learn about it. So I'm curious. You've been in office since 2016, right? Or you were elected in 2016, right?
Yep.
And totally. So I'm curious what your kind of where you see that Okanogan County has gone from 2017 to 2020 now. What's the status of the county right now?
Well, I ran under the actually current administration was under duress. They were being sued over the comprehensive plan, which and they had a lawsuit with the judges in the county. There were things like that caused the voters to want to reject the county commissioners, at least a lot of the voters in the county. And so I ran for office. And so during that period of time, we've been working on an update to the comprehensive plan that we're actually getting ready to have a hearing for, which it took that long to actually, go back and reverse the effects of the work that was done before. And now we're going through a process to adopt that plan. And it'll be a bumpy ride, but I think we'll probably get it passed. And we had to satisfy 3 groups at least that were appealing the State Environmental Policy Act determinations on it. And that included the Yakama Indian Nation and the Methow Valley Citizens Council and FutureWise, who challenges a lot of plans around the state. Used to be called Thousand Friends of Washington. Now they're called FutureWise. And so during that period of time, we worked on that. And, of course, my expertise is there for comprehensive planning, but it doesn't mean that the other 2 commissioners always agree with me, which is really a different thing for Okanogan County Board of County Commissioners, is because there's a diverse group of 3 there that really now debates the issues rather than just rubber stamping everything and sending it through that maybe 1 or 2 commissioners want to deal with. It's a partisan position. However, I'm an independent. I don't really think that partisanship has any business in county government, but it is. And so I have to deal with that. But my intention is to listen and talk to everybody everybody, and sometimes I'm labeled a liberal because I'm talking to the liberals, and if they were seeing me talking to, the ranchers and those folks and spending a lot of time with them, they would think otherwise. So it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to talk to anybody and work with them. And that's what I think is the most important part of this work that I'm doing is being independent and being able to communicate with lots of different people who are our constituents.
Right, right. So just to take a step back and get maybe a more holistic look at the commissioner position, you're talking about, this growth, project, and I guess I'm curious, what other things are our county commissioners responsible for, and maybe if you can even expand on that,
Yeah, I can.
the stuff that you already mentioned, and just talk specifically about what that means, if it's allocating funds or talking about building programs in the county. I've spoken to a few county commissioner candidates, but it's always interesting to see what you all have to say about what the job is as a county commissioner.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting topic to address because, when you talk about things like, well, what have you accomplished? It's like, well, I did the job, and that's a pretty darn big thing to accomplish. In fact, because you have full budget oversight over the entire county, all departments and districts and those sorts of things. So, at the end of every year, you adopt the budget. You develop it from August on. And at the end of the year, you adopt that budget and you interact with the other departments and elected officials. Counties have several elected officials that are department heads, which is different than cities and towns. So that's a key point for it. Throughout the year, you're always dealing with budget amendments and adjustments and, addressing various evolving issues that arise. And of course, then you have your own departments that are directly under you. So that includes human resources and risk management, emergency management, and then facilities staff to take care of all the facilities around the county, and then we're responsible for all of those and their improvements, those sorts of things. And then the county commissioners also, like land use and other things, they develop ordinances and actually make law too. So we have this fiscal oversight. We also develop and create and adopt laws for the county, policies for the entire county, those sorts of things. And it goes on, by the way. But I also play a role in interacting with the Washington State Association of Counties. I'm on the board of directors and their legislative steering committee. So I spend time in Olympia addressing issues that affect counties. And we, every year we go there and meet several times with legislators and that sort of thing. So that's one of my roles I play. I also serve on several boards. Some are related to it's a county commissioner's position. North Central Washington, it's aging and adult care, and workforce development, the Community Action Council dealing with poverty and those sorts of things. I sit on all those boards and then interact with a number of other organizations that serve the county and we finance to some degree, including mental health. That's Okanogan County Behavioral Health Organization, those kinds of things. And then I'm fully engaged in a forest collaborative, which we come together with diverse groups, work through issues relative to the forest, the U.S. forest, and come to some agreement as to how the forest will be managed and various projects. We endorse those projects as we go through them, make suggestions. And we recently had one project that a lot of environmental groups and the industry, timber industry, came together on, approved them, and then an outside environmental group from the Rockies filed an appeal on the treatment and sale. And we came together and filed amicus briefs in that case, supporting the Forest Services position because we'd already gone through all these issues, and we said no, the environmental groups here have addressed these issues, and we helped kind of intervene in that process.
Right. Okay. Very interesting, and I think certainly something that a lot of the people that I've spoken to, who don't understand, what a commissioner necessarily does in,
Yeah.
day-to-day life. So very interesting to learn. I'm sure people will be fascinated by all the work that you all are up to. So I'm curious, pivoting a bit to some current events that have occurred. Obviously, we are experiencing this coronavirus
Mhm.
pandemic right now, and I'm curious. I really just have no idea. Is there any role that the commissioners can play in allocating funds to somehow relieve pressure for citizens? Is there any role that the county commissioners play in kind of helping to solve the either short-term or long-term effects that COVID is eventually going to have on our communities?
Big role. Big role, and especially because we're, we manage a budget, and so when the federal dollars come in under the CARES Act, um, we allocate those dollars locally. So they come through the state and they come to us in various forms and at various times. But our primary focus, of course, is our health, foundational health department. We sit on the board of directors for the board of health, all three of us, and then we committed when we asked for, excuse me, when we asked for a waiver for going to a different phase, we committed a quarter of the funding that came to Okanogan County, which was $2.3 million, to go to the health department to address and to track, to do testing, to do all these things that health departments have to do now. And so we supported them through those dollars, and it's a good thing those dollars came in because it's hard to find the money in the budget to make those things happen, especially that much money. Additionally, some of the dollars, and especially the balance that we don't see needed in the county to address shortfalls that we have as a result of reacting to the virus, including this kind of meeting, for instance. We had to get equipment to have our meetings videoed and have Zoom related to them to interact with the public. So there were costs across the board throughout the county departments, and we allocated some of those funds to buy equipment and things to then respond that way. And then there's a large portion of it, and probably at least $250,000 so far, we've allocated to direct grants to small business that have needs to keep themselves afloat, because they're the businesses that really were affected. You can have a Walmart and a Home Depot and those, because they're multifaceted, they're multi-department. So they were looked at essential, and some of these businesses, like just some retail stores, didn't fall into the essential business classification, so they had to close their doors, and that puts a lot of businesses at risk. So we pumped money into those businesses to pay various things to keep them going, and we'll continue to do that until these funds have to be spent out. And then
Fantastic.
we also declared, our own statement of emergency, declaration of emergency, which allows us to be more flexible in other areas. But at the same time, we were dealing with all that stuff. We had one of the most major fires in the state, called the Cold Springs fire. And so then we were responding to that at the same time, which it went pretty fast, but the recovery and long-term recovery will be ongoing, where nonprofit groups actually step in and do a lot of that work.
That was my very next question, Commissioner Branch. I was going to ask, what is the role of the commissioners at the county commission to, in mitigating fire, participating in fire mitigation tactics, responding to fires, and then following up with the community after fires that are devastating go through so much of the land.
Well, we don't put out fires. Certainly, we engage with the Department of Natural Resources, the fire districts, which are actually part of our bigger budget, but they have allocations of funds that are tax funds for their purposes, special purpose districts. But we do emergency management takes care of emergency response, making sure that people are aware of their surroundings and what's happening. we put out the information for what level of evacuation there is, and our emergency manager coordinates a lot of that activity in the county, and especially with communications and making sure that people have what they need in the immediate term. Like at our fairgrounds, we allowed people to come in there and camp if they lost their homes, and bring animals there, and people came down with donations of various feeds for the animals. We made a place there in the very short term, and then we passed that on to the nonprofits then for a more longer term, recovery effort. So that's the role we play, and we make, we have this emergency management role. We have an emergency management plan, a fire, it's a multi-hazard mitigation plan that we're in the middle of updating, but those plans deal with the mitigation of various disasters, and that means you're purchasing equipment and things to be ready for those disasters. And COVID is now, a pandemic is an added disaster event that we plan for now, which, this is my first pandemic, and I hope it's my last, and I hope it ends before I go.
Right. I think everyone hopes this is their last pandemic for sure. But yeah, thank you for answering that question. I think that was something that I wasn't aware of in terms of how much fell into your budget with the fire techniques and even the fire departments and such. So very interesting. I want to move to a different, more theoretical topic that I think maybe ties into your campaign a little bit, and something you talked about earlier. And that is the issue of political polarization. In kind of the last 10 years, we've seen a decline in trust of the media, kind of a rise of political polarization. We're seeing it all the way, to our federal politics, as well as in local politics. And so I guess I'm curious, first of all, is political polarization something that you've encountered in being a candidate in Okanogan County, in being an elected official in Okanogan County?
Extremely so. And one of the drivers for me being an independent is that the fact that when I worked for cities and towns, they're nonpartisan. And when you get to the county level, even the treasurer and the prosecutor, and they're all partisan positions, and the auditor. And sometimes you wonder, well, why would that be? And but that polarization is huge here. We're mostly a red county, but there's a lot of change going on here. There's a lot of people moving here from the urban areas to get away from. And during COVID, they especially started moving here. A lot of them had land here already, maybe summer homes and that kind of thing, but people started moving in. And so that's going to change the demographics of this county to the point where it's not going to be all red. And if you I kind of look at it this way, how you look at the state of Washington on a map, and there's the left side of the map and the right side of the map. Well, it kind of fits, because the left side of the map is more liberal and the right side is, more conservative in political terms. And the Okanogan County is the biggest county in the state, and it's just like that as well. The Methow Valley is on the west side of the map, and the rest of the county is on the right. And a lot of people have moved into the Methow Valley over many years that are they come from a lot of different areas, and it's got added diversity to the county, which I think that makes us stronger. But on the other hand, it also has created a lot of political polarization in terms of what people care about, what their values are.
Right. Well, that's some great insight, and yeah, glad to see that you feel comfortable running as an independent and you found success in that way. That's fantastic. So yeah, my last question, just so I don't take too much of your time today, is kind of just about your priorities in the next, I guess, month before the election, and then going forward if you are, of course, reelected. I'm curious what you think the #1 issue in Okanogan County is right now.
Well, that's a great question, because there's so many things that rise to the top, during your term, and that's happened several times. So as people ask that question to me, and I write about it, I sometimes find myself shifting around a little bit, because there's things rise to the top. COVID is a top priority, and I committed to that being my priority over the campaign. And now I think we've got a fairly good handle on how we're going forward with it. But still, I'm at that time, I have to say that there were a lot of county commissioners across the state when the governor issued his proclamation, and especially in these rural eastern Washington counties, that do not like the governor. They did not like the order, and they bucked it. Some of them wanted to, they did file suit against the governor, and I refused to go there because I was in direct communication with the governor's office, and so we avoided all that, and I think we did a lot better just by not wasting our time, doing that kind of thing. And then COVID changed, but so that was a priority. But another one is it's a huge priority, and it's one across the state, and that has to do with water availability. And we have two major basins here: the Okanogan Basin and the Methow Basin, and they're very different in their dynamic. But the Okanogan comes out of Canada through the Smokemean River and the Okanogan River, and watershed planning is really a critical piece right now to even what we plan in our land use distribution. And there's a lot of angst over the issue, and polarization over that particular issue. I'm faced with that with the approval of a watershed plan right now, and hopefully we get through that next week and get it off to the Department of Ecology so that the state isn't going through a rulemaking process where other people are making our decisions for us. We have the opportunity to do that ourselves. So that's a huge thing that I've been engaged with, actually, even when I worked for cities and towns. And water right issues and those kind of things. Been doing that for 25, 30 years now. So that's a really huge one, but one that I work on, and it's a major point for me, and will be forever, and that is having being open to the public in terms of our decision making. And so I really pushed real hard to video our meetings, and it makes it easier actually in the end once you get there for the clerk to keep up with minutes and things like that, because just we got a backup. You can do action minutes. But we also have had something that didn't occur before, but we had a citizen comment period. We're really trying to interact with the public and make sure our decisions are open to the public as much as we possibly can. And sometimes you have to really be on top of that. You really have to make an effort to make sure people hear what you're saying, and clarify issues, because we still have a group called Okanogan Watch, and they're a kind of a watchdog group from the Methow, or actually they're all over now, but they keep an eye on what's going on in local government. They want to know what's happening, and this is helping them too with this videoing. And it's still we still interact with them quite a bit to make sure they understand what's going on in meetings. But that group started out as actually a group called Rock, and it was replace our county commissioners was their effort. And they went in and they recruited as many candidates they could from anywhere, any position, and got a slate of commissioners there to give some diversity to the board. And I ended up being one of those people because there was three. I was running against the incumbent and two other people. So that open government is what they wanted, and that's what I'm delivering to the best of my ability. And so that's overriding about every issue that comes up. So those are priorities.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure you're excited to get to work if you're reelected, and I wish you the best for the rest of your campaign, sir.
Well, and thank you for your effort to get the word out to people. That's really an admirable endeavor that you have going there. So,
thank you. We're happy to.
All
righty. Well, thank you again for your time, and yeah, we'll see how the election pans out in November.
All right. Keep an eye on it.
Have a good one.
Care.